China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific is forcing the world's major powers to unite in unexpected ways. From Asia to Europe, new military and strategic partnerships are forming, and they're all pointing in one direction. Welcome to Geo Frontline, your go-to channel for deep dives into global power shifts, alliances, and strategic conflicts. Let's break down how the Indo-Pacific Four and NATO are now syncing up to counter China's rise. In recent months, the Indo-Pacific Four, comprising the United States, Japan, Australia, and the Philippines, have intensified cooperation in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and surrounding maritime zones. What began as a series of bilateral agreements has evolved into a more integrated quadrilateral structure, and that's just the start. At the heart of this formation is a shared concern: Beijing's aggressive behavior, from militarizing artificial islands in the South China Sea to deploying Coast Guard vessels near disputed territories. China has triggered alarm bells in Tokyo, Canberra, Washington, and most recently, Manila. Now, this isn't just about patrolling contested waters. It's about building a parallel security architecture to balance China's growing influence across Asia and beyond. The IP4 nations have ramped up joint naval drills, intelligence sharing agreements, and military base access deals. Australia and the Philippines are conducting more frequent maritime exercises. The US has expanded its Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement with Manila, granting American forces access to key locations like Palawan, just 200 kilometers from China's illegal activities in the Spratly Islands. Meanwhile, Japan is stepping outside its traditional post-World War II defense posture. It's increasing defense spending, boosting ties with Taiwan, and working closely with the US and Australia to ensure China doesn't get a free pass in the East China Sea or beyond. So how does NATO fit into this picture? Surprisingly, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, originally built to contain the Soviet Union, is becoming increasingly interested in Indo-Pacific affairs. At its latest summits, NATO has labeled China a systemic challenge, highlighting Beijing's authoritarian influence, cyber warfare tactics, and strategic alignment with Russia. And NATO isn't just talking. For the first time ever, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand were invited as official observers to the NATO summit. Behind closed doors, talks focused on deeper coordination, intelligence sharing, and joint technological development. There's even discussion of opening a NATO liaison office in Tokyo, a symbolic but powerful signal to China. This kind of cross-regional convergence is rare in geopolitics, but it speaks volumes about the scale of the China challenge. China, of course, sees this as encirclement. It accuses the West of Cold War thinking and warns that such groupings will only escalate tensions. But the reality is this: most nations in the Indo-Pacific are no longer willing to sit quietly as Beijing redraws boundaries, bullies neighbors, and challenges international law. Let's zoom in for a moment on the Philippines, perhaps the most pivotal player in the IP4. Just a few years ago, under President Duterte, the Philippines leaned heavily toward China, softening its stance on maritime disputes in exchange for economic promises. But today, under President Marcos Jr., the script has flipped. Manila has reasserted its claims, welcomed US troops back to key bases, and joined regional defense drills that openly prepare for China-related contingencies. This dramatic shift has given the IP4 a frontline anchor in Southeast Asia, and sent a strong signal to Beijing that its coercive diplomacy isn't working. Now combine that with Australia's security pact with the UK and US under AUKUS, Japan's revised military doctrine, and increasing NATO interest, and you begin to see the shape of a trans-regional alignment. One that stretches from the Indian Ocean to the Baltic Sea, with China at the center of its concern. Of course, China isn't sitting idle. It's deepening its partnership with Russia, expanding influence through the Belt and Road Initiative, and trying to drive wedges between US allies. But so far, it hasn't stopped the momentum of this growing coalition. There's also an economic layer to all this. Many of the IP4 nations plus NATO members are working to de-risk from China. Whether it's reducing dependence on Chinese technology, securing rare earth supply chains, or blocking Chinese investments in sensitive sectors. This is about more than just military moves. It's a systemic strategic shift. Even neutral countries like India, while not part of NATO or the IP4, are watching closely. Their own skirmishes with China in the Himalayas have pushed them closer to the West in subtle but significant ways. India may not join alliances, but it is aligning interests. So what does all this mean? It means we are witnessing the early stages of a new global security framework, one that isn't defined by geography, but by shared values and mutual threats. In many ways, China's rise has unintentionally unified democracies across continents. And while this alignment is still evolving, it has already changed the strategic map of the 21st century. The Indo-Pacific Four may not have a formal charter like NATO, but its actions speak louder than words. Together with NATO's growing Indo-Pacific focus, we are seeing a de facto alliance architecture, flexible, global, and increasingly firm in its message. China's expansion won't go unchallenged. As we move forward, the key question is how far this coordination will go. Will we see joint bases, interoperable weapon systems, a standing task force for Indo-Pacific crises? One thing is certain, the balance of power is shifting. And in this unfolding drama, the Indo-Pacific isn't just the front line, it's the future. Thanks for watching GeoFrontline. If you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned as we continue tracking the world's most strategic developments, one front line at a time.